What is up, guys? Welcome to the video. Today we are actually going to be working on the Supra. I know I haven't gotten a lot of footage of this car. This is a customer car that we're doing some wiring work and some installs and some mods to. So I kind of want to give you a rundown of what we got going on with the car. So first of all, as you can see, there's no intake on the car right now. We have switched to a bigger throttle body aftermarket intake. This is a 90mm throttle body with a 14mm fuel rail and some 1000cc injectors. We have this taken off right now just because we want to make sure all of the wiring is correct. We are running a Wiring Specialties harness. This is a standalone ECU, so I want to give you a rundown of what we're doing with that. This is a Garrett to 1JZ swapped into a Mark III. This is not a swap that we did, it's a prior customer or prior owner swap. But what we are doing is we're installing the Link ECU with a Wiring Specialties standalone harness. So this harness was pinned out for the Link ECU. What we're doing right now is making sure the start signal and the ignition signal's correct, so that way we can go ahead and make sure that we're powering the car correctly and the ECU. So one thing that we have here I want to show you is kind of a cheat sheet for us. This is what we're going to be using for the wiring diagram. So this is something right here that that Wiring Specialties provides for the standalone. So we are running the Storm. So it has two connections, A and B, and then the Wiring Specialties harness is pinned out to work for this ECU. So what we're going to have to do once we get the wiring all complete, everything good to go, we're going to start having to calibrate the map. So when we calibrate the map, we're able to tell the ECU where we want the auxiliary inputs to be, the analog inputs, the outputs, the triggers, all of that. So what we'll do on the ECU map is get the calibration to where it ties into all of these sensors. So A and B is your analog volt, your temp, you have two temps, your air, and then you also have your map pressure, tack, etc., etc. So what we're gonna have to do once we get all the wiring situated is make sure our pinout works. Then we have a really nice Storm ECU. This is the G4 before the G4 Plus instruction, but it's very straightforward. It tells you about your inputs, your analog, your digital, all of those. This is kind of an idea of what a configuration would look like. This is a universal configuration for a 6-cylinder car. And then this is kind of what I showed you earlier. This is what we're working with the ignition to give it power from the relay box. And then we'll go ahead and go through here and show you what else we got. So that is all part of the instructions. I'm telling you, Link is an awesome setup. Outside of this is kind of the quick start guide for the Storm ECU that is in the car. This kind of right here is really cool. If you're not wiring it in, if you're running a different setup, creating your own harness, you can actually use this to go through, say what pins you're connecting to. That way when you do your calibration, or whoever's doing your calibration, it'll make their life way easier. This is another look at what the pinout looks like. And here is Wiring Specialties harness instructions. This is very generic. This kind of tells you what's connected, the coil harness, the interface harness, your main harness. This kind of gives you, we're going to kind of skip this. We've already done a majority of this. Starter to alternator to starter. So that's correct. Blah, blah, blah. And then we have harness power. Done that. This is speed calibration. We're not going to be using that. And then your harness is in. So as easy as that. After that, we do have the sub harness. We are running a relay box because we do not have, this is a standalone ECU. To make our life easier, we're going to be running this relay box that allows us to easily put this in the car. It tells you how the fuse block works. There's 3 relays: ignition, fans, fuel pump, and fan. And then the main relay, which is on the ECU main harness. This kind of gives you a general idea of what the ignition and relays do. This tells you on all the wires, this is your leads. This tells you where they're going to be wired and what to check for. So I'm telling you, between Wiring Specialties and Link, if you're somewhat intuitive, you read up, this will be very easy to understand. And then what we've done, just to make sure that we kind of got our plan together before we start pinning stuff into the ECU is we have gone through, printed out a generic look of what the relay would look like for the ECM or the ECU, and then we have also added a 2J or a 1JZ pinout. So this kind of just shows ignition switch where it's at. That's what we're doing right now, is going through and making sure our ignition is hooked up correctly for the ECU power. And then we do have a pinout for the stock 1JZ GTE pinout. We will not need this because we do have the pinout instructions from Link, but it's always good to have it just in case. Reference yourself. This is a swap, so it's not like you're just going to a car, plug it in an ECU, and it's going to work. So there's going to be some trial and error. We would like to go ahead and just start from the beginning. Even though we have put the harness in, that's very straightforward. Once we get everything else put together, we have power to the ECU, we start doing calibrations. We will do some screenplay with that to kind of give you an idea of what I mean when I say pick what pins you're using for your analogs, inputs, and outputs. So we'll do that as well. But for now, we are going to go ahead and make sure that we have the right power. What I am doing, as you can see, this has already been messed with. I'm hoping this is not factory Toyota, but there is some issues here. So what we're going to do is clean that up a little bit, get the ignition power set up to where it will power the ECU, and after that, guys, it's just party time. So let's get this going. We do have a lot of work to do. We still have the S14. We haven't really got to do a lot for that. We're debating on a relay box for that, so you'll see. But by the next week, we will have that, an S13 and the Supra all completed. So I'm looking forward to it. Hope you enjoy the video, guys. Hopefully I can get enough footage where it helps explain the situation, also what we're doing. So stay tuned for that. All right, guys, so we have the start signal, or the ignition signal hooked up to the key on. So whenever we put the key in, you can see here, you can probably barely see it, but there's a Link ECU. There is no light on the ECU. So once we turn on the key, it activates ignition, and then now there's a light blinking on the ECU. So if we go into the Link software, open up the PC Link engine management software, you can go ahead and hit this offline button. What that should do is now allow us to be online onto the ECU, and you can see the connection. This right here, anybody that is unfamiliar with Link, Link does something where they lock or disable the ECU, every ECU that comes from Link. So all you have to do is get the serial number for the ECU, go in there and unlock it. I believe it's under ECU control, ECU unlock, and then you would enter the unlock code based on the serial number. So you'll get that off of their website. One thing you can do though is you can go ahead, check all your errors out. As you can see, we're showing 3 temp errors. This is your event log on the side. So you can see we have quite a few errors. If we clear the default errors, then it'll probably go away and only show the ones that are active. A in volt 1, A in volt 3, A in volt 6, A in volt 7, 8, blah blah blah. The whole reason why these are deactivated is in the ECU settings. This is where we're going to have to start matching the pinout that I explained to you earlier in the video. So you'll go to your auxiliaries, and these are whenever we're going to have to start mapping all these bad boys out. So intake VCT solenoid, boost solenoid, blah blah blah, fuel pump, all of that is not pinned correctly for this ECU, therefore it's reading wrong. We have our auxiliary outputs. These are probably right just because they're ignition drives, injection drives, and then we'll have our analog inputs, which is our engine coolant, inlet air temp, engine oil temp, our volt 1, which is our map sensor, volt 3, which is our TPS. So we got a lot of stuff going on here, guys. You can see that everything just needs to be calibrated basically. One thing that we are going to do is set up where is that warning system voltage is less than 7 volts. Reason being is probably because our battery's dead as but we'll go ahead and get that set up. One thing we will be doing is creating a channel or a load page here. We have our boost is what we use to do our boost control, and then our logging, our mixture map. We're not going to use this on this setup. We do not have a flex fuel setup tuning, but we will load one so we can configure all of our inputs and outputs. But we will go ahead and start with making sure that we have our start signal set up, and then go from there, guys. But hopefully so far you've kind of seen what we've done to be able to get the system set up. I feel like we're going to probably have to get a new battery. I don't know if the starter is going to, or if the setup here is going to allow us to do what we need to do with it. We know all the wiring's good, then we will get the manifold back on. We don't want to put the manifold on, that way in case we do have some sensor issues, we can square away. We have the starter signal, all of that already hooked up to the starter. We have the fuel lines ready for the AN, so it's literally just sitting the intake back on. Another very important thing I forgot to mention was the grounds. So with a wiring specialties harness, you will have 2 chassis grounds. So we have one hooked up to the body, another one hooked up to the back of the valve cover. We will need to tighten that, and I will probably move that somewhere on the body if possible. But you want to make sure that's nice and tight so we don't lose connection there. That's it, guys. We're going from there. We do have some modifications we have to do to the inlet piping for the intercooler, just since they were running a different setup. But I mean, we're not complaining. We're almost there, guys. So we're going to get our book back and start working on the setup. This is our flying leads, so we do have the ignition power set up already. So we're just going to work our way down. So nothing fun to see yet, but as we do come across and we make some changes, we'll definitely record it, show you kind of what we're doing, how we're doing it, and hopefully everything works out good. So what is up, guys? Welcome back to the video. Today is the next day. It's about 7:30 in the morning. We got the intake in last night. We got everything buttoned up. We got the injectors, the rail hooked up, and we got the TPS hooked up. We got the throttle cable. We're going to have to do some cleaning up on the throttle cable. We had to adjust the length of the cable itself, so we don't want that metal on metal rubbing like that. So we'll probably end up putting some type of setup like this in here where we can still adjust it, but for the most part everything's done. All we have to do is get the power steering connected, and then finish putting up the input. So last night, I don't recall if I showed this part of it, but we did get the ignition and the start signal hooked up. All we have left to do is, most of these will not be ran as we're not running electric fans and stuff like that, but we will have a little bit of wiring left to do, not a ton. Today I am going to be doing some stuff on the computer, so I will record that and show you kind of what we're doing there to get that situated and get all the calibrations hooked up correctly. But for the most part, the Supra is good to go. We have a little bit left to do on it, but I don't see it taking more than a day or so. So we will definitely update you guys on the Supra project, what we got going on there. And today we're going out of town, so looking forward to that, a little bit of vacation. Other than that, guys, stay tuned for the next video. Appreciate it. Like, subscribe, comment.